And I remember about the middle of the pole, it was like life just shot you. And you just hit an absolute like slow jog to the end. And then the second thing is understanding where the level of like just discomfort starts, and then the level of how far you can go past that.
So if you look at development from like a human development standpoint and you understand that process, you can apply that same process to anything.
I believe, and there's not very many people in baseball who don't believe this anymore, stronger is better.
Like I always joke around, I tell everyone like I got one speed and it's go. And Brad always gets so upset with me, especially being in rehab, because it's like they do have to put the reins on me and like, hey, like relax a little bit, like let's not do that much intensity. But like I'm an athlete, dude. I want to go. Like it's time to go, and when it's time to go, I go, and that's all I know.
Fronts 1-2 on the way.
Listen.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Kova Sports Brick by Brick podcast. My name is Tejay Antone. I play for the Cincinnati Reds and also a partner at Kova Sports. This is my co-host, Jeremy Kivel, former player for the Reds and also owner at Kova Sports. We bring this podcast to you because we just want to bring more information to y'all. We're going to start doing interviews with guys in the major leagues and every resource that we can get our hands on, just so we can give you guys the most up-to-date information and just get you guys educated. I think a lot of the bad decisions that's made in baseball are just a lack of education. And so we're going to try and just give you as much education as you can possibly handle and let you do with it as you please. So with that being said, I get to bring on, at first was just a strength coach of mine in the Reds and the minor leagues, now a very, very good friend of both of ours. In an earlier episode, Kivel and I talked about we had Tommy John together in 2017. Well, Morgan Gregory is here with us today. Morgan Gregory was our rehab strength and conditioning coach. Absolutely tore us apart in rehab. Just absolutely annihilated us. Morgan is the head strength and conditioning coach and nutritionist for the Philadelphia Phillies. He was with the Reds from 2014 to 2022. Is that correct?
2013
to 2000.
Yeah, through 2021.
To 22 or 21. Yeah. So 22 is first year with the Phillies. So we talked a little bit about it earlier. He's enjoying it. So, hey, we are so happy to have you on here and just get your plethora of knowledge.
Yeah,
to share with the world.
Yeah, it's great to be on here. A small correction: I'm the director of strength conditioning and nutrition. I'm actually not a nutritionist. I have this with our dietitians all the time. I try not to make as many nutrition decisions as possible. I just help the people make them who have them. So, as you guys well know,
you are very smart with that. You helped me a lot with some of my decisions when I was in the big leagues last year.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And to go back to originally the rehab, that was probably some of the most fun that I've had as a strength and conditioning coach. You really get to, there's not very many times in professional baseball you get to work with guys in their off season. And for guys in long-term rehab, it's kind of like a year-long off season. So being able to go through that with you guys, as you know, it wasn't just our time in the weight room, our time conditioning. With Jeremy, I've got some of the greatest memories of you doing some things. I can share some stories for days about that.
I can't wait.
So I had some great times with that. But as you guys know, that was just a great time for us to get to know each other and build some relationships. I mean, I know you two got closer there. There's a lot of people that we still keep in touch with to this day. It's really cool. It's a strange time for young people to be in a place where they can't move forward, with making better numbers, with, lowering the ERA or winning baseball games or getting reps in a game. But it is definitely not a lost period. And I think that was really cool. And you guys really took advantage of that. And, I was very happy and proud to be a part of it.
That was I learned more in that time period than I learned in my entire career during rehab. And I think it's funny how, you put people in a situation where like they're not able to do what they want to do, but they have one outlet, right? And our outlet was rehab and to work hard. And it was nice to have a leader like yourself, Morgan, like, making sure that we were staying on top of everything, and you were holding us accountable. Like you said, we built relationships. Like obviously me and TJ are in the situation that we're in, and we still keep in touch with you and then other players that went through that process. And I think that goes to show that, there's only good things that come from, being in a struggle, being around a bunch of good dudes.
Yeah, I'll tell this one really quick. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'll tell this one really quick. So we were doing 6, I believe there were 23-second polls. I think there were 23-second polls. And I was giving you guys a lot of rest time. And I said, all right, I guess you guys had done 3 or 4. And I said, if you get this last one and under 23, we'll be done. And I remember one of the guys we had there at the time, Jared Freeland, was like, oh yeah, I'll take that bet. I'll take that bet. And you, Jeremy, said, absolutely not. You're like, I will not make this one. And everyone talked you into making the bet. And you guys started. And I remember about the middle of the pole, it was like life just shot you. And you just hit an absolute like slow jog to the end. Slow jogged in. I just remember watching that end like, my gosh, this guy knows himself so well. He knew for a fact, I'm not making this. And about halfway, because I think you were beating everybody about halfway in, and it was just like something in your soul died about halfway through that pole, and you just stopped.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah,
I still see that.
But the first 3 poles, though, who won by like 50 feet?
Well, that wasn't odd for any of our conditioning that time. I mean, that was the great part about you two. You know, there's something about when you're training, and we can get into this a little bit later. When you're training, understanding how to hurt and where it is you can push. And I think that is one of the things. And TJ, you talked about this already. You talked about it, you know, being a lack of education for guys, or a lack of knowing. And I think it's a combination of two things. It's a combination of thinking that what's happened in the past is the way things that are. So if you think, all right, players don't get stronger in season, or I can't lift heavy in season, or I can't do these things at max effort and still recover because I have been told, or people have told me who played in the past can't do this. That as is a part of education, sure, it's an accepting things as they were. And then the second thing is understanding where the level of like just discomfort starts, and then the level of how far you can go past that into a cave that's going to push you farther than the next athlete that stops at just discomfort, right? Lifting is supposed to be uncomfortable. Conditioning and getting better is supposed to be uncomfortable. In theory, throwing a baseball at max effort is tearing your arm apart, as you both well know. And so what we do on the other days is we recover that, and we try to find modalities and try to find pathways to be able to recover what it is that we're doing. But lifting, conditioning, and improving ourselves physically is absolutely no different. Getting into the place past just simple discomfort, because if we threw to a moderate 70% in game, well, we'd get shelled all the time. There'd be no successful pitchers ever. Hitters would just sit here and be popping batting practice over the fence all day. But we look at lifting as a recovery tool and not a progress tool for what we're doing. And I know we're going to get into this later, but I think it's important that young people at a very young age understand where this is a little bit uncomfortable, to this is what it's like when I push, to all right, this is too far. This is way too far. And understanding that you can work in this realm right here, and that's where improvement beyond the guy next to you who's stopping at discomfort is going to come. That is where the gains during the season will happen. I think that is one of the largest things for major league athletes, professional athletes, high school, college, and even young athletes, is they get to a point and they say, okay, now it's time for me to compete. I'm done getting better. Now it's time for me to compete. Well, high school into summer ball, you're looking at what, 5 months, 6 months? Well, if every single year for 4 years, you're getting better for 6 months, stagnating for 6 months, and that's the best case scenario, is stagnation, right? If you're getting better and then you're not doing anything to make yourself better and you stagnate through 6 months, that's best case scenario, because what most likely is going to happen is you're going to get better, and then you're going to get a little bit worse, and then you get better, and you get a little bit worse, and you get better, and you get a little worse for 4 years, all through your high school career. And so if you can go get a little bit better and then still get a little bit better and then get a little bit better, all we're going to be doing is moving upward this entire 4 years. And then you're in a launching place where you've taught yourself not only how to feel uncomfortable and understand that you can recover from that and still play at a high level, you've taught yourself what type of consistency and intention you need to have every single time you go into the weight room or condition, or do breath work or your nutrition or whatever it is. You've taught yourself how to do these things. And then when you get into college, and then everything raises up a notch, right? There's more stakes to every game. There's more stakes to your education. There's more stakes to how you live. You got to take care of yourself, apartments and all these types of things. You're away from home. Now the stakes are risen a little bit. The groundwork of the mindset of how you do things during season, that's been laid. Then we add a little bit of stakes to that. Well, the groundwork is the foundation of the house that we're building. And now that's all been laid, and it's a firm foundation. We can just build on top of that versus trying to get to college, trying to get to professional baseball and go, oh man, all these guys are working hard and now I've got to try to do that. And then what happens, you get uncomfortable, you get a little beyond uncomfortable for the first time, and you think either this is too much, I'm hurt, I can't keep this going, or I don't want to feel this way. And now you've got to make a life decision at 18 to 21 that you could have made at 14.
Exactly. And yeah, and that's we try to preach that with the guys that we train at Kova. Something that we, were able to experience, and TJ is still experiencing, is like you can get into like specificity of training and how to manage your volume and all the intricacies of training, but really it's establishing the intangible habits and understanding what you should and what you shouldn't do to continue to push the needle forward. And a lot of players will be like, well, should I deadlift or should I squat or should I not, or should I do max effort work? But really it's just about establishing those routines so you can build that foundation like you're talking about. So when you do get the opportunity to play at the next level, you can continue to progress into that level without taking any steps backwards. And then also to give some validity to the example that you gave, we have some players that lift with us during season, and we have some players that do not. We can get into reasons why, but I don't think it's important. But for example, we had a kid that decided to continue to lift with us in season. He was a kid that went from 74, 77 and trained with us for about 6 months. And then he went to 82, 85. So his velocity increased and he continued to lift during season. And his last start, he was at his peak velocity at the end of the year. And he started every single week as a 16-year-old. And then on the other side of the token, there's guys that decided not to come lift for whatever reason, and their peak velocity is 94. They're in their last, couple starts and they're 85, 84. Mm-hmm. And, that goes to show the work that we put in is good, whether it's perfect or not, who cares? It works. And examples like that help me as a coach continue to push forward. But then also, I think it goes to show the players are hey, if you commit to the process, you're going to be who you want to be. And it may be a little uncomfortable, but we're going to make sure that we're giving you the right stuff to do.
Yeah, the human. Yeah. Go ahead, TJ.
No, I was just going to relate it to what I'm doing. I remember in rookie ball, all they talked about was develop a routine. You need to create a routine. Develop a routine. What's your routine? And it was funny because I never got reamed for that because I had already kind of developed that routine through college, end of high school, into college, and then I got to pro ball, and I already kind of knew what I was doing. I was at that time I was into the Kelly Starrett, mobility WOD. So I already had some base level education of, okay, maybe I need to work on my hips. Maybe I need to foam roll a little bit. Maybe I need to move my body just to prime it a little bit so I can prepare my tissue for this high level work that I'm about to put in and so forth. But a lot of kids just don't even know how to routine. And I think, like you said, kid, we're trying to teach them, and that's what stuff like this is for. But it takes time. It takes time, and it takes trust too, because someone can say, hey, you need to do this. And if you don't fully trust that person, you're not going to take it for what it's actually worth. And that's why I try my best to use my own merit. Guys, look, I'm in the big leagues. I am at the highest level. This is what I do. You should do it too. Even though you are 16, a lot of these principles, maybe you aren't going to deadlift 500 pounds like I'm deadlifting. That's okay. But the principle of it is moving every day. And like you said, Morgan, using in-season lifts for recovery and to prepare the body for the next outing.
Yeah. One of the things, one of the really great questions, Jeremy, that you sent was what aspects of strength conditioning have a positive effect on performance and longevity? I think this is a really good question because a lot of people may answer that with exercises or different things that you could do inside a weight room or conditioning wise. In my opinion, the best things that you can do from a strength and conditioning standpoint that will improve performance and longevity is lifestyle and intent. And that's, TJ, that's everything you're talking about here. Is it was built into your lifestyle to be consistent with what it is you were doing and to be consistent with the intention that you had going into the weight room, right? So by that, I mean, if you're consistent with pushing yourself, if you're consistent with challenging yourself, if you're consistent with improving your athletic capabilities through the time that you are competing, through the time that you're not competing, through all of the time in the cycle of your season, of your year, then you're going to get to a place, and no matter what the resources you have around you, if you have a straight bar, trap bar, I mean, you guys have both played in some places where you don't have all of these things. You may only have dumbbells to 50. You may only have bands to do. But if in your mind, you go to the ballpark, you go into your sessions and you think, all right, I need to challenge myself. I need to push the limit of what it is I'm capable of in each aspect of what it is I'm trying to do, trusting that my body will recover, trusting that your capability to intentionally recover post exercising, post competing, I trust that capability, then that right there will sustain you much farther than if I were to tell you every player should deadlift or every player should squat. Because as you all both know, there are some people who are great pullers, there are some people who are great squatters, and some people who just aren't good at any of it. But every single one of these people is capable of challenging their athletic capabilities and challenging their skill on the baseball field on a daily basis. We're all capable of doing that. It does not matter which exercises are right for you. And I would strongly suggest that everybody find an outlet to find which approach is right for them. Is that approach straight linear? Is that approach conjugate? Is that approach undulating? Is that approach in a different way that maybe I've never even heard of? And that's the great part about, I've been in this game for 10 years, and the amount that I learn every year just increases by so much. And which tells me the amount that I don't know every single year is just so vast. It's not to say that I want to hit knowing everything one day. I mean, obviously we all try to push towards these things, but I think that it's important that we boil it down to what is important for each athlete. Not necessarily every baseball player should these 4 things and then you're good. Thanks for watching. It's more so learn about yourself as an athlete, study yourself, and the best way to do that is push yourself into the margins of the page. Get off into the edges, and then that's when you find out, all right, I don't do well in these situations, or I don't do well with this exercise. I've learned that because I pushed that and it doesn't go well for whichever reason. Maybe you didn't recover well. Maybe it didn't feel great. Maybe it didn't translate well into what it is you're trying to do as an athlete. Whatever it is, find that outlet that's going to teach you who it is you need to be on the field, which builds off an athlete. TJ and I were in this conversation before this all got started. Each baseball player is, I like to put everyone into a pyramid, right? Everyone is a human being. We all wake up and we've got to do basic things. We've got to sleep to get to this point in the day. We've got to eat something. We all have to breathe, and we all have to judge ourselves. We have to be okay with ourselves. And that's the baseline. It doesn't matter who you are. You can be the best pitcher in the world, the worst pitcher in the world. You can be a coach. You can be somebody sweeping the floors. Everyone has to wake up and do these basic things. Beyond that, baseball athletes, you got to be an athlete first. You have to be able to conquer the movements necessary to accomplish what it is you're trying to accomplish, whether that is the right pitch, whether that's hitting that pitch, whether that's fielding that pitch or throwing that pitch to first base or catching that pitch or whatever it is. You've got to be able to do these things from a movement, motor control standpoint first before you ever put a glove in your hand, before you ever turn on the lights and say play ball. And then beyond that, then you're the baseball player. After the human, after the athlete, then you get to play baseball. I think a lot of people, they begin their training at the tip and they say, all right, I'm a baseball player. These are the things I want to do on the baseball field. Now athlete, now human, right? We go from the field and then they go into a facility like your guys's, and then they go, okay, now I need to breathe. Now I need to sleep. Now I need to do everything. Whereas the more athletes understand, without breathing, without eating properly, without a good grasp of where my mental state is on a daily basis, the athlete side of me is not going to be as big. Imagine if that pyramid flipped upside down and the attention that we paid on being a human was the tip, and then the attention that we paid on the athlete was a little bigger, and then the baseball part was this big. Well, that house is going down super easy. But if we can build this gigantic base of knowledge of ourselves, and that goes into who we are as an athlete, who we are as a person, and then bring it up into fortifying that through the right channels of strength, the right channels of movement control, movement variability, and the ability to move in and out of positions that you may not be able to anticipate, creating and accepting force in all different planes, in all different situations. And then you can move that up into, it's the top of the 7th, runner on first, this guy's up at the plate, this guy's on deck. What do I do? Then that goes there. Well, that's a harder house to knock down right there. And I think a lot of people like to flip that, especially young athletes with a lot of skill, because they say, all right, I've got all this skill. How do I now let me back up this skill versus yeah, I have the skill, but let's start here. Let me build up into this skill. It doesn't mean we neglect going out and pitching or going out and hitting or going out and fielding. It doesn't mean that. What it means is that we have to pay the right amount of attention on building the base of that skill first. That way we can move everything forward in one way versus building skill huge and trying to move that forward, and the athlete and the human trying to catch up behind. That's a tough game to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to lose that race every single time. You're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And like I had the blessing to be able to go into pro ball at 18. Like Morgan, you knew me when I was a child. You know, I'm 28 now, and it's almost like, you know, speaking from an aspect of human development, that is the most important thing. And if you don't develop the human and the athlete first, you are going to lose, especially at the highest levels. It does not matter how good you are. You're either going to get hurt or the game's going to eat you alive. That same process is the same for everything you're trying to become proficient in. So like, for example, if like you said, like say I get a 12-year-old that comes in, like their dad wants them to have, you know, 5 pitches, to be able to black both sides of the plate with them, also throw, you know, plus velocity and, you know, all the stuff that happens at the end instead of coming in and developing a foundation of movement, right? Being able to pick up half of their body weight and carry it 10 yards. It's like if we don't touch those aspects first, how are you going to throw the 7th inning 0-2 slider 2 inches off? It's just not, it doesn't work that way. And then even speaking in terms of like very specific movement development with throwing, it's like, okay, like the post that I made today, it's like, all right, well, we can look at this broad spectrum, like, oh, hip shoulder separation, like that's important. It's like, okay, so let me train hip shoulder separation with specific drills. It's like that can work, but then like, can I even look deeper as a coach and figure out why I can't actually hit that position, whether it's something that's happening earlier in the throw or it's a lack of movement options because I don't have strength in certain ranges of motion, and that's where the weight room can come in. But that's, you know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of it all ties in. So if you look at development from like a human development standpoint and you understand that process, you can apply that same process to anything, whether that's being a power lifter or a baseball player or whatever you're trying to pursue and grow as. I think if you can look through that framework, you are going to be successful.
Yeah. I think one of the issues why a lot of people don't focus on the foundation is it's not sexy. You know, it's not sexy to talk about breathing or talk about rib cage expansion compression or your sleep cycle. Like it is whenever we, you know, we're in the big leagues and they're like feeding you all this information of like, hey, check your RIM cycle because we're really trying to get that edge, that last edge. But, you know, just the normal like 15-year-old, they don't have access to that, those kind of technology and modalities. Doesn't mean they can't focus on it and like work on, okay, maybe I should just be in my bed for 10 hours a night because I know that the normal sleep efficiency is about 80% and I need 8 hours of sleep. Like they're that kind of education just isn't out there for those guys. So we, as me and Kivel as a facility, definitely need to do a better job on trying to educate our kids on that. But at the same time, it's just not sexy to like work on that. You know, it's not like you're not going to like post on Instagram. You're going to post on Instagram the 7-mile-an-hour gain you made. You're going to post about the REM cycle, how you extended your REM cycle, you know? So I think that's another issue is we got to make it like easier to work on some of these foundational level stuff because it does matter and it does like lay the foundation of your future development.
Yeah, I think a lot of these things we're talking about, and Jeremy, you made a lot of good points there. A lot of these things that we're talking about is players owning the capability to do what it is that they do on the field. You know, I've seen so many players, and we can get into this in a second. I mean, I would imagine if you both thought of the most talented baseball players that you ever were around, you're thinking about two people or one person. You might be thinking about the same person. We all three might be thinking about the same person. Who knows? That did not make it to the major leagues because the requisite things that you guys are talking about, the capabilities to build that foundation, to understand the importance of it, and then continue to build on it as they build the baseball player as well, wasn't there. And so what happens is, like you said, Jeremy, you lose that race. And that race gets lost, and the next thing you know, you're back home and you're watching these people who you think, well, that guy wasn't that good when I was there, but he's in the major leagues and he's doing his thing. And I think we all know these types of players. I think when you're young, you know, you talk about that parent, and I know those people and know those athletes. And they come in and say, well, my kid's really good. Or someone gets drafted and the scout says, well, this kid's really good. He can do all of these things. And then when you watch him move outside of the baseball field, his movement doesn't look like it does on the field. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't have the capability to do that. It means he doesn't own those movements. And there's a difference between paying rent on movement and owning that movement, right? So take hip shoulder separation. You take a lot of young people and they just go out and they wheel a ball and it looks really good. And then you bring them into a controlled setting and you just simply ask them to stand with their feet facing forward and turn their shoulders to you. And then next thing you see, both feet are peeling off the ground. Everything's coming off the ground. You think, man, when I watch you throw, you're actually able to do that. What's happening is this person has learned to compensate for whatever they don't have with what they do have in order to create something that is efficient enough to complete the task that they want to complete, which is throwing the baseball in the way that they want to throw it. But their inability to do it in a vacuum just says, well, this person doesn't actually own the capability to do this, which means that when you try to enhance that ability, when you try to build upon that with the athlete, there's no way to really build on that because they don't really have ownership of what it is they were doing in the first place. And so then you've got to go back to the foundation and just give them the requisite capability to do what they're already doing from a movement standpoint. And then you can build on that. What that does is it busts the ceiling off of what it is they're already doing. And I think that is an important thing for people to understand, is that movement is something that you can either pay rent for or something that you can buy outright. And the buying outright is just like paying off a house. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of hard work. Paying rent, we can all go into a leasing office and find different ways to do that. And some of those ways, very short-term option. Some of those ways are going to be shorter term than other ways. And I think it's going to be a difficult road the more it is that you say, all right, I'm going to go to this bigger place and just pay rent on that, or I'm going to go to a bigger place and just pay rent on that. So the more it is you guys tack on as the technicians to these players and say, all right, here's that slider you're looking for. All right, well, here's an extra 5 miles an hour. Okay, all right, well, here's a piece of, technical advice that's going to give you this shape to this pitch that's going to be so much better, without coming back to, all right, do we own the capability to complete the task that we're wanting to complete, or are you just throwing all of this stuff into a pot and just firing it down and trying to make it work?
Yeah, I think you have a great point there about owning positions. That's why we like the water bag so much, because they really expose owning positions and owning movements through the throw. And I think that's why the water bags have really helped. I think kids of every age, the young kids, the older kids, it really helps to just everyone own positions better. Kiv, you have a couple questions for Morgan here?
Yeah. So main question is going to be, where do you see some negative or downsides of strength conditioning inside of baseball? And what are some examples of where strength and conditioning can be taken too far that, causes bad things to happen in terms of their performance on the field?
Yeah, well, first thing I want to say about the water bags, that was one of my first purchases when I became the director with the Phillies. Was I went to Amazon and bought water bags. So there's that. I think that's a great point. But Jeremy, I love this question because I think, especially as a strength conditioning coach, I think that we are constantly trying to sell what it is that we're trying to do. We're trying to sell it to athletes, to parents, to organizations, to whoever, that what we do is great, what we do is great, what we do is great. I think what we do can be as equally detrimental as it can be great. And I think where it can be detrimental is creating movement barriers, creating guardrails for people. So if we say, all right, this is a hip hinge, this is the only way you can possibly hip hinge, you can't hip hinge another way, this is the way that you hip hinge, and then we harden that and we callous that and we say, this is the only way for your torso to flex over your lower body, this is the only way that you can do that. And then everything that we do just hardens this in there. The way that we deadlift, the way that we pick up a kettlebell, the way that we jump, only is one way. Baseball is an incredibly unpredictable sport, and movement variability and having, as you very well put, movement options for the athlete, that is incredibly important, because when a baseball game starts, you have no clue how many ground balls you're going to get, what pitches you're going to have to throw, in what situations you're going to have to throw these things. And then much less, this little things different than that, right? The hole is here, my hip feels like this, my arm feels like that, and then having to get around these things. And I think as strength coaches, when we do that, it is more detrimental for the long-term part of that athlete. Yeah, increasing your deadlift max from 315 to 375, it's a great thing. And there is a requisite amount of strength that it takes to do that. But in the world where we don't vary the exercises that we do, and the only thing that we're doing is trying to make this person's deadlift 315 to 365, what we've done is we've hardened in what this movement is and how this athlete accomplishes this movement. That is why through anyone's program, it doesn't matter what you're good at, what you're bad at, what things you feel like you should do, the more variability that we have, the more movement criteria that you force yourself to have to check off in a training session, that is just going to help your capability to be malleable to what is happening in the game, what is happening in a training session, and have to make adjustment to be able to conquer those things versus just saying, all right, I'm going to deadlift today, I'm going to deadlift on Wednesday, and I'm going to deadlift on Friday. That is what I do. And then on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I just do these things. And then what happens is, yeah, you might be working hard, you may be pushing yourself, but you also may be hardening in certain movement patterns that will be very difficult to fix as you get to be an older athlete.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And the more that you try to drive up your main lifts, like you're talking about, like say, like for example, I've seen negative effects for myself because I apply this stuff to myself before the athletes do. It's like, okay, well, I wanted to bench 315 for reps, right? The process of me getting there took a lot of time and like thinking of like, oh, where's my weak points? Okay, what accessories can I hit that are gonna, bring up my weak points that are not putting me in a position to bench more weight, right? And the amount of effort that took, if I was a baseball player still, it wouldn't be optimal in terms of like, I need to be more proficient at my skill and I need to sleep, I need to eat, I need to do all these things. The effort that I put into increasing my bench press, if I was a baseball player, would have taken away from the development, the proficiency, and the skill that I'm actually doing. So that's one thing that I see too, is like, it's cool if your deadlift goes up, but very important that the variability is in there. So not only do we not get stuck in those positions that we're trying to train for, that's not the main focus, is for us to be stronger in a certain lift. We use that as a means of training, but that's all it is. The goal is like, hey, Joey Votto, I got to execute this pitch in the ninth inning, back foot. Like, that's what I need to be good at. But I can use the weight room to feel better while I'm doing that, and then also increase the movement options if I need them while I'm performing my skill.
Yeah, no question. I think understanding what is important, and I mean, geez, that can go back into, the aspects of strength conditioning that positively affect performance and longevity, is understanding what's truly important, right? Putting numbers on things is a very difficult thing to do because, again, like you said, then you start chasing this number. And for instance, you guys know about the 2-mile test, right? We used to do a 2-mile test. And the issue with the 2-mile test coming into spring training is it forced players in the off season to focus on the 2-mile, on running 2 miles. We're not focusing on becoming better pitchers, becoming better executors, becoming better professional baseball players. We're focusing on running 2 miles. And that may have taken away from what was actually important. The purpose of the 2 miles was to ensure that, the aerobic system is at the capacity with which we feel it needs to be to complete a spring training. Be that as flawed as it may have been, that was the purpose of it. But it loses its purpose once you put a time on it and once you put an expectation to it. And then players go home and think, oh, well, I have to hit this specific time, which is this many laps around the field, and that's all I got to do. And that equals success. Well, that's not success, right? Success is the ability to get out. The success is the ability to execute pitches. Well, that's the thing that we should be working on. And so I think that it is incredibly important to understand what is the important aspect of what you're training is, what you're trying to get out of the weight room. And ultimately, we all believe, I believe, and there's not very many people in baseball who don't believe this anymore, stronger is better. If you take one player and you clone that guy into completely the same exact player, and then you make one of them stronger and one of them stays exactly the same, we all believe that the stronger version of this player is going to be a better version of this player. And so that is the ultimate, very simple, but exceedingly difficult. Just because it's simple doesn't make it easy. It's a very simple concept, but it's a very difficult concept because of all the things we've already talked about. The fact that everybody's a little bit different. The fact that movement variability within the game of baseball is vast And we don't know the extent of it. Back to the original, the lack of education, it's more so, I think, more so than a lack of education, it's more of being okay with the way that things have been and saying that's the highest that we can get. The best a pitcher can be has already been done. The hardest a pitcher can throw has already been done. The best a hitter can be has already been done. So that's what I need to do to get to this place. Understanding and being open to, we have yet to tap into how good it is as humans, as athletes, as baseball players. We've yet to tap into how good we can be. The game has not gotten to be as good as it's going to be, and we notice every single year it just gets even better. 1 year pitchers dominate, 1 year hitters dominate, 1 year, and then the pitchers get better, and then the hitters get better, and then the pitchers get better. And the level of the game continues to rise. So we can't do that by saying, this is our ceiling. Everything we do has to be underneath the ceiling. We have to be accepting to the fact that we don't understand the limits of the human body, the capability of the human body to make adaptations, to move in different ways, and to conquer these things that we're trying to do to become better during season, off season, through a career, and everything in between.
Yeah, I want to go back to the 2 mile test and give like some application to that. So, for example, like I'm a little crazy. I struggle with the 2 mile test, not an endurance guy, sprinter. I threw 100. I was explosive, but endurance is just not my thing. It was my weak point. I got better with endurance training with you, which made me a better human because I got better at what I sucked at. Like I recovered better, everything was better. But for example, there's a number on the 2 mile test, 15 minutes or less. I struggle with 2 mile runs. So what did I do in the off season? I went home and I took up boxing and I boxed for 6 months. And guess what? I ran my 2 mile in 14 minutes and I did my job. But I didn't build volume and intensity of my throwing program. I didn't throw enough bullpens where I showed up. I didn't have my pitches dialed in. And then lo and behold, we have a 10-minute live BP in spring training. So my volume was here and the ability to throw was like here. So, and I throw 100. So I'm not saying it's one thing that leads to injury, but there's probably some things that will help you get hurt. But, and I don't point the finger at anybody and like, I'm not here. I learned that. And now I know it's like, hey, and that's why I can have this conversation with you. It's like, I put my focus on running the 2 mile and passing that. So I look professional and I took ownership of it and I went boxing and I had fun and I got in shape, but like, I wasn't prepared to perform the task.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely appreciate even the not pointing fingers, but I'll point that one, I'll point that one easily. And I think a lot of that has to do with fear, of people not wanting to say, well, these athletes don't need to do this and these athletes do need to do this. And I think that's why it's vastly important. I think the game of baseball is truly evolving into approaching each player as an individual and not approaching 250 minor leaguers, 80 high school players, 60 college players, all as one group. It's difficult to do because at the end of the day, it's a couple of coaches on a lot of players. And you got to say, all right, everybody, this is what we're going to do. And I think you bring up a good point of that offseason that you had where what you did was exactly what we talked about, is you hardened in one thing, and that was your aerobic capacity. And we hardened that. And then what happened was you got into the max effort side of things, and you had built guardrails, and then you try to jump outside of those guardrails, and you're just in the Wild West at that point, and you're just praying you make it back within the guardrails, with the ability to expand to get to that place. And that live BP session was probably more of a hope and pray than it was an actual go out and conquer.
Yeah, well, but that's the issue though, is that's not how I work. It was still go out and conquer while not also being prepared. So I was throwing 98 in that live BP, and I was facing Nick Senzel and whoever else, studs that we have, and like, yeah, I'm gonna try to get you out. I don't care how prepared I am, but I don't have that ability to like limit myself with my output. And that's something that now I know I can go do something like, say they have the punching bag machines, right? At the wherever, like if I go and I let one eat there and I haven't been throwing punches, I'm probably gonna strain a muscle because I can go, like I can explode. So like now I know like for my life going forward, and people can apply this to their life too. It's like, I'm not prepared for that type of muscle contraction or whatever you want to put it on. So I'm going to take it easy because I'm probably going to strain something.
Yeah, no, it's a really good job that like you're finally being able to like self-regulate, because it is, as athletes, like we just want to go. Like I always joke around. I tell everyone like I got one speed and it's go. And Brad always gets so upset with me, especially being in rehab, because it's like they do have to put the reins on me and like, hey, like relax a little bit, like let's not do that much intensity. But like I'm an athlete, dude. I want to go. Like it's time to go, and when it's time to go, I go, and that's all I know. So, and that's what's got me here. So, it's always this fighting on the inside too. It's like, okay, this is what's got me here, but I know that maybe I'm not ready for the throwing 80 miles an hour yet. So like where I have to limit myself mentally. It's just a learning game. I think just learning to your body, understanding your body better, like you were saying earlier, like just start recognizing what works for you and what doesn't. Like, oh, hey, I did RDLs yesterday and I can't walk today. One, I'm either super weak, or two, those just don't work for me. Like, is there another way I can train my hamstrings?
For how much volume you did.
Or you weren't prepared. Yeah. Anything, like it can be anything, but just start recognizing what works for you. Like, how can I sleep better? How can I eat better? Okay, next level, like how can I jump? Oh, wait, when I swung my arms a little harder, I jumped a little higher. So like maybe I should focus on that. Just the littlest things, like all of it matters. So as we're coming to a close, I swear we could have talked for 3 hours.
No, this has
but
been great.
I don't want to keep you all day. We'll have you back on. We'll have you back on and do another one, because this has been great. I do want to ask, there's going to be strength coaches that watch this, and you are, you're the pinnacle of strength and conditioning right now. You are with a major league team and you are the director. That is the top of the top, as the same as someone making it to the big leagues as an athlete making it to the big leagues. In your profession, you're at the top of the game right now. So if you could go back in time and give yourself, your younger self, some advice, to make that path a little easier and make that journey a little easier getting to the top of the game, what would you say to your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to go outside and watch more. Be more involved in what is happening, batting practice, bullpens, catch play, defensive work, base running. Go outside, watch, learn, hear what the coaches are saying, and understand what it is these players are trying to accomplish. Looking and seeing what they are doing and then trying to program or trying to create an approach is one thing. Understand what they're trying to do and then creating an approach and programming is a completely different game. I think baseball is going away from strength conditioning professionals, athletic training professionals, anybody who just sticks in their room and they say, all right, I've done an FMS screen on this guy and I know what he needs to do, versus I'm going to go outside. I'm going to listen to what the coach's feedback is for this player. I'm going to talk to the coach. I'm going to talk to the athlete, try to figure out where it is the organization wants this player, where the coach feels this player is best suited to get to where the organization wants to get to this player, and where this player, how the avenues by which this player is trying to reach that exact point, and then support that journey there. I think I spent a lot of years sticking in the weight room trying to come up with the best program for this specific athlete, versus understanding where on their journey to the tip of that pyramid where they are currently and how they're trying to get there, and then me boiling back to how I can help this human and athlete become the baseball player they want to become. So my largest advice to myself would be, I've always been interested in baseball, but take an interest in every possible way that these players are trying to get better, and learn as much as you possibly can about the baseball side of things. And to be honest with you, that is what I would tell any strength coach in any sport. There's a difference between personal trainers and strength conditioning coaches, right? Strength conditioning coaches try to help athletes to an outcome. Personal trainers are trying to train people into specific physical goals. I mean, that may be butchered a little bit. But if I'm a strength coach for a football team, a basketball team, a baseball team, doesn't matter what level, if I'm not paying attention to what it is we're trying to accomplish as an end goal, then everything we're doing on the way up to that could be leading us into avenues that are outside, going back to that 2 mile example.
Yeah, no, that's
money.
That's great. That was really good news. And I think it's really cool, like as a player, to hear that, like that makes me trust you so much more. Like if a strength coach is so bought into like, hey, like how can this kid move better? What can we now do in the gym that helps him move better, that helps him achieve the goal that he wants to achieve? And like, I know you have my best interest at heart, and you're not just like there for your paycheck just to like write a strength and conditioning program. Like you're there to make me better. And I'm like, I trust this guy. Like that is my thought. Like, and I think you noticed that over the especially last few years, I would come to you with some personal matters. I'd be like, hey, Morgan, I got this going on. Like, what do you think of this? Hey, I got this. And then like you were straight up with me. And I love that. I love that connection that we had, that we could talk, we could have conversations like that without it being like, no, I'm an employee of the Reds. I cannot help you with this, So that's been, what a wonderful time with you, Morgan. That's all I can say. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, I mean, ultimately, the cool part about that was, you, TJ, last year, if we're talking about that, you're a gigantic piece into helping the Cincinnati Reds win. And that was what I was interested in. And that's what were and are interested in. And so it made that, not only your and my relationship and how good it was, but we were both going for the same thing. You were trying to be as successful to help this team win. I'm trying to help, everything be as successful, help this team win. And not only do our personalities mesh, but now our goals mesh. So even if our personalities didn't mesh, and as you well know, of the 26 players that were on that team, I didn't mesh perfectly with everybody. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to get to one spot. So that takes away me being defensive for what I'm trying to do. That takes away you trying to guard what it is you're trying to do, because we're all going to the same spot. And I think that's an incredibly important thing. And I can't do that if I don't understand what's happening out in the field.
Amen. You said it perfect. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We kept it short for you guys, kept it under 1 hour. So, no, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate your time, Morgan. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us. And we will be back next week. I don't know who we're going to interview yet, but it's Trump. Up in the air. Kivel will figure it out.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, guys, if you could just go on go follow us, subscribe here. That would help us a ton. We love doing these videos. We don't even get paid for this, but we just love shooting out information. So we're going to keep doing it. And
thanks, guys.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great one.